Today I'd like to tell you the story of Puss in Boots. Once upon a time there was a miller. Now a miller was someone who ran a mill that was used to grind wheat into flour or corn into cornmeal. Now a mill can be run by wind like a windmill or water like a water mill, but this mill was run by a donkey. It was a small, mild-tempered donkey, got along well with everybody, didn't try to buck or bite anybody, so he's a good little donkey. Anyway, the miller had 3 sons. The oldest son was always very busy. He was the one that if he saw a kitten on the side of the road, he wouldn't even notice it because he's so busy thinking about what he must do next. We all know somebody like that. And then the second son was the one who would see the kitten on the side of the road, but would only pick it up if he thought that later he would be able to sell it for a profit. Then the third son, who was the youngest son, was the one, if he was going along the road and saw a kitten, he would pick it up to help it and would either keep it because it needed a home or would help it find a good home later. Anyway, this miller had the windmill, he had the donkey, and he had the 3 sons, but he also had a cat, and the cat did a very good job at keeping the mice away, which is very important when you're dealing with wheat. So one day, because the miller is very old, he passes away, sadly. Now, to the oldest son, he left the mill because he thought that way all the sons would work together to keep the mill working. Well, the oldest son said, since I am the oldest son, the mill is mine, and you two don't belong here, but I want to keep the donkey because it's useful. Well, the middle son said, no, the donkey was left to me, so I'm going to go and I'm going to travel and I'm going to trade and I'm going to be a merchant because that is what I've always wanted to do. Then the oldest son looked at the youngest son, who he saw as daydreaming there with the cat because the cat seemed to be sleeping outside the mouse hole. Because cats will do that as they wait for the mice, but they're not really sleeping, they're just pretending to. Anyway, the oldest son said to the youngest son, you and the cat, both you lazy louts, can get out of here. Out, go, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. So very sadly, they left their home. Then as they're traveling along, the youngest son, who has a little bit of bread and cheese in his pocket, stops to share it with the cat and says, I don't know what I'm going to do. I only worked at my father's mill and I don't know where else to go. And the cat says, which surprises the son very much because the cat had never spoken before. The cat says, if you take the coins in your pocket and get me the best pair of boots you can, I will help make your fortune. The youngest son says, okay, well, we have a marvel of a talking cat, so I think I'll take his advice. So he took the coins and they went to the next town, and the youngest son purchased the best boots he could for the cat. They were absolutely beautiful. And the cat says, okay, now what we're going to do is we go down to this river and you take a bath in the river because you need a bath. We've been traveling all day. Okay, cats are very clean, but you need a little bit of help with this. So then as the youngest son is bathing in the river, the cat hides his clothes because he knows that the king is coming along the road in a coach with his daughter, the princess, and she is very beautiful and very kind. So the cat runs out of the bushes by the river onto the road as the king's coach is approaching and says, stop, stop. My master, the Duke of Robus, has been robbed and he needs help. The king says, "Stop the coach." Anyone who has a cat that can talk must be a very powerful person. So we shall help this Duke of Robus and see what we can do. So they call down to the youngest son, Duke, come out from hiding. It's okay. And the young man is hiding behind the bushes because he has no clothes. So he's very embarrassed. So the king says, we shall give him some clothes from our trunks. So he puts on the clothes, and the princess sees him, and he is so handsome and so kind. She says, oh, he must be a good man. And the king says, the duke shall ride in the carriage with us, and then we shall go to see his home. And the young man is very, very nervous about this because he knows he doesn't have a home to go to. But the cat, Puss in Boots, says, let's continue on this road and we'll get to my duke's castle. Because he is the king to me, but to you he is only a duke. Anyway, and Puss in Boots goes ahead of the coach. And as he passes, he sees some peasants working in the fields. And he says, when the king comes this way, if you tell him that these lands belong to the Duke of Robus, then I shall make sure that you get some gold. The peasants say, oh, yes, we will do that. Yes. So then Puss in Boots goes along and he comes to a castle. And in this castle lives an ogre. Horrible, fearsome ogre that likes to terrorize the people and tear up the forests and tromp around and smash things. Okay, not a nice ogre, but he's also magical. And Puss in Boots knows this. So he goes in, pounds on the door, and the ogre says, who's bothering me? Arr! Well, Puss in Boots says, my lord, the Duke of Robus, says you shall quit these lands at once. And the ogre says, ha, 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 no one can stop me. And Puss in Boots says, but who else is magical enough to have a talking cat? And the ogre says, oh, well, I have magic of my own. I can change into anything I want to. If I wanted to, I could be a talking cat. Well, Puss in Boots says, I don't believe it. I think you can only change into big things. So the ogre says, we'll see about this. So the ogre then turns into a crow flying around. Ha, see, I can change into something smaller too. And Puss in Boots says, a crow is almost as big as a cat. I bet you can't change into anything smaller. So then the ogre says, okay, and changes into a lion. Puss in Boots says, hey, I thought you said you could change into something smaller. That's something bigger. So then the ogre says, and changes himself into a mouse, and Puss in Boots leaps on him and eats them all up. And then when the king with his coach arrives at the gates of the castle, Puss in Boots is there and says, welcome home, my lord, the Duke of Robus. And the king is impressed that the young man has such a nice castle with all the wealth involved with it, and all the peasants he's passed on the road seem to be in good spirits, saying that they belonged to this duke. So the king let the young man who had nothing marry the princess. And Puss in Boots never had to work another day in his life. And that is the story of Puss in Boots.